Hello, I'm Glenn W. Hunter, and with me today, once again, is our subject matter expert, ShorDenny. And we are the three C's of SEL: communication, community, and collaboration. And what we're going to talk about today is Southern California students, they're falling off the grid. SoCal students falling off the grid. We remain focused on the pandemic because it hasn't gone away. We remain committed to shining a light on what's happening with the livelihood of students here in Southern California, particularly the Inland Empire. And most importantly, we remain committed to Shore using her insights, her conversations, her relationships in these channels to help us understand better what's happening with our youth, with education, and really the foundations of our community. So sure, kids are falling off the grid. Why are they no longer where we put them? They seem to be scattering on us. What's causing that?
Gosh, a few things, like you said. One of them is COVID, right? The quarantine has done things to shift the family. Not only has it shifted the dynamics within the family, but maybe kids that the parents are, necessary workers, and the kids are now living with aunts and uncles or living with grandparents to do school, right? Or maybe they live with them during the week while school is in, and then they go home on the weekends. There's displacement of families that, because of COVID, have been homeless, have become, evicted, and those families are grouping together. So cousins and brothers and sisters and all of those are grouping together and trying to share space. And that's a way of them being disconnected too. There's disconnected simply from school, right? Because there's distance learning. So that's a disconnect because they're not walking up onto the school sites. There's so many different ways that, reasons that they're falling off the grid.
Earlier in the school year, one of the things that we did notice is that connectedness through technology was a bit of a strength, and now it seems that's not even a galvanizing force as it had been. And I believe some of that comes down to the fact that the scattering is making it more difficult. There's still that need for human connectivity, for that human touch. So my question is, as we start seeing our students scatter, some of them have evolved into a homeless situation. What is becoming of them in terms of navigating human connection?
Huh. Well, that's going to vary. And some of our homeless youth are going to have support from extended family, and they're going to be able to go there and be safe. Some of them are not going to have those groups to go, those safe groups, and they're going to be, in stressful situations, living in cars, being and very stressed, not having connectivity. It would be one main thing that we would look at on how they're going to be disconnected because of homelessness, not having the stability or, and again, that's why they go to other relatives for that connectivity that they might need just to be able to get into class.
So as these different connections sort of start to fray a little bit, what becomes of their health? I mean, we talk about social emotional learning and having the skills to cope and to manage trauma. There's a lot coming at them. So from a health perspective, what are their options to start being more healthy?
One of the things that, we're talking with youth to do, and especially now in an online situation, is support each other. Have their own, Snapchats or whatever it is, be connected and support each other through homework and through communication and things. And they can also, youth can challenge each other, right? Because physical activity is something that they're not getting as much of because they're not on the school sites, and because of the quarantine and everyone being afraid, a lot of kids aren't out and about, running and jumping and riding their bikes. So do that, and then what they can do is do challenges with each other through their social media so that they can be connected again, and they can have that competitive edge of, ooh, I bike this far, how far did you bike? Or, and start to build connection. And I really believe that these connections are going to stay. Even when the youth go back to school, some of these like infrastructure, some of these ways that they're going to be able to communicate are going to stay. So it's not worth, it's worth the time to build the connections. So that's what we're telling the youth, and that's what we're seeing some youth doing, because they are disconnected. You have your A student who is now struggling to pass, and that is a horrible mind place to be, right? A student that's used to it being easy, going to school is easy, now being challenged, it rocks their self-esteem, right? I mean, it does so many different things. So when we're looking at youth that are struggling that in different ways than they're used to, how do we build that resilience? And again, I go to them working together. Peer-to-peer is a great way of doing it. Other than that, we go to our breathing exercises. Ask for help is always one to try to stay connected. If you don't have connectivity and things like that, these are things that are beyond our control. I'd say go to a library during the day so that, libraries have connectivity, Starbucks, somewhere where you might be able to go into an atmosphere where there is internet. But it's really hard for those who are disconnected, and they're disconnected. They can be disconnected from their siblings, disconnected from their parents, living, in different situations is what we're seeing all across the nation, really. So how do we help our kids when we see them slipping? And I think that is really the answer. They need to support each other. We need to help them find ways to build support groups where they can support academically, physically, and emotionally.
I want to double down on that a little bit, because I think you bring something important to light, is the fact that the students want the connectivity. They're wired for it. And I think there's a sense of frustration in not being able to achieve it. From the adult side, from the schools district side, even their efforts are being thwarted. One, trying to locate them. Sometimes they know exactly where they are. They're behind that door, and the parent is being resistant because they feel betrayed by the a school system. So as you're putting those components together, the opportunity for our youth to interact still has to be done. So my question, in terms of helping them getting it done, in communicating with their parents or the adult in the room, how do we get them to embrace the fact that there needs to be connectivity still among our youth?
I think the parents know it. I think other than them needing literal connectivity, internet, things like that, computers, things that they actually need, equipment to get it done, I think they know that their youth need to communicate, that they want to socialize. So I think that the challenge here is that the parents are stressed as well. When we're looking at this school year and we're talking about parents that are working at home and they're dealing with the youth that are doing school at home, it's quite overwhelming. We're seeing that no one was prepared. There wasn't a pre-class that said how to manage your time during online situations, right? That class didn't happen before COVID. So people were slammed into this. Some had the skills, some did not. Some are used to dealing on computers. Some never really mess with computers at all before COVID. So how did the school district help those parents and the community? There are many parents that are feeling, why are you pushing my kid when we know that, not much happened, I mean, and what is going to happen? My kid was in 7th grade. We barely got, connectivity this year. We've been moving around. Now my child is struggling. We're behind several credits. What do we do now? I think is where we really need to focus. And how do we not let them fall? How do we grab them mid-fall and pull them back up and move on? And I think that's the big question. I don't think the schools have the answer, because Several things. One is that they're paid by the day, right, for students to be on campus. So they are looking at bringing students back to school. But I don't know if that's the healthiest thing, especially for our disconnected youth. There, I think with spike stress levels, we're seeing that in teachers as well. So I think the best way here, the best things that we can do again is build support systems.
So, as we're talking about the remedies for our youth, I mean, we've addressed the fact of displacement with them scattering, and obviously disconnection where they're not able to or have challenges just connecting with their friends, whether it's even with social media. And I think the important thing that you put out there is that distance learning has not been well received in some of our communities of color. And I don't think it was that the intentions were wrong. I'm not even going to be quick to blame the execution, but I do believe there was a significant disconnect in expectation and capability of being able to implement distance learning to bridge that gap. So there's a gap now. And again, in the spirit of social emotional learning, having the skills to get through obstacles, what would you recommend, or what do you think would be a good idea for school districts to adopt as they have to deal with this learning gap that has evolved? The learning gap is real. What do you think that would be a good tact for them to serve their students well in closing it as they go forward?
From a mental health standpoint, is it possible to stop the world for a year? To, in every educational establishment, say that this year didn't count and just move forward? Is there a way to, because the seniors right now, I know that they've implemented some things like taking away some testing and this and that and the other so that they can move into college, right? So there are some things in the educational system that are happening to support the youth. I think, again, mentally, the best thing that could happen is that we move forward, like saying, like we did last year, a fail or pass. For this year, you either passed or you fail, no grade, and let our students who pass move on into the next year. I think summer school should be a real option for everyone, that everyone should go to summer school to try to pick up some skills that they're going to need for that next grade level. Tutoring, I think, is something that should be huge, peer-to-peer, as well as the schools bringing tutors to support, and that could be online, because a lot of our youth now are set up for online systems. So even if we go back to on school, they can still do the training online, the tutoring online, for extra time. So I think giving a pass, but trying to buffer and fill those skills that they're going to need to move and flourish in the next grade is what is really needed. What do they need to move forward? And that's what we need to focus on, maybe not what they've missed.
I think that is a very, very bold plan, and I think it would be one that our school officials would do well to examine. I think the point that you're making with regards to that lost time is in fact lost time. I mean, they're not going to get it back, but you do have a summer to sort of bridge some of those skill developments. I mean, if they're in front of the TV for a week, I think you can make an ethical and an academic argument. Well, you owe us that week, and it's going to happen in August. But I think bringing the repetition that's involved with effective learning and effective academic progress, as you've outlined it, I think is tangible. And I think it would help as they start ramping back up into the fall and start approximating the normal schedule and progression of the academic careers of our youth.
Yes, and that way it wouldn't be as stressful for our youth, and they're not as afraid when they're coming back to school, you know, of what the repercussions of this year have been on their grades. So I really think that that would be a solution mentally successful, and I think academically we really don't have that much of a choice. And we have to remember the whole world went through it, not just Riverside, right? The whole world went through this, and we need to look at it in, you know, systematically, how we can support the whole group. That's college students as well as K through 12, right? How do we support them as they're trying to build their lives?
Wow. Communication, collaboration, community. Again, we bring these together because those legs really help our children learn, for one, but more importantly, cope, to develop the whole person. And that's what 3 C's of SEL is putting out there. That's what the work with Community Now that Shore does, where it's tangible with their development, both socially and academically. And at the end of the day, it will be those efforts in conjunction with the more standard efforts through the districts that are going to get our children back on track to become contributors in society and to be the young scholars that we seek to develop. So I think the insight you brought was both prescient and important. So with those attributes at your name, how do we find you?
You can go to communitynow.info on the internet, and you can call us at 951-413-6587. Comment, subscribe, and like. Please share as much as you can.
Once again, out here in the Inland Empire, seeing what's happening with the education world and what our students are learning and how our teachers are managing, and knowing that we have resources like Community Now to enhance those processes to get our kids up to snuff and make it a better environment. 3 C's: community, collaboration, communication, ShorDenny, Community Now. And always in closing, I want to encourage each and every one of you, particularly in these challenging and unprecedented times, please be safe. Thank you.